Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. Welcome to the Christmas special drawing on Shakespeare. He is Austin Tichenor of the Reduced Shakespeare Company.
And he is Gary Andrews of the internet, Gary Scribbler on the Twitter.
Whoa!
Woohoo!
There we are.
And it's our special end of season holiday Boxing Day special.
With the topsy-turvy intro and special hats.
Hats, backgrounds. I thought of going, I found this, it took me less time to find this ugly sweater, I'm sad to say. And I also had this as an option. Oh no, you can't see it. Bah humbug.
Bah humbug, which could be highly appropriate today, actually.
Well, it could indeed, but I thought, oh God, 2020 has been such a horrible year. Let's just stick with cheer and not Scrooginess, even for a bit. But because we also have a very special guest today, one of the founding members of the Reduced Shakespeare Company, and the co-author of The Complete History of America Abridged, the Bible, the Complete Word of God Abridged, and the show that started it all, The Complete Works of William Shakespeare Abridged. Your special holiday treat Santa has brought us, Mr. Adam Long.
Woo!
Woohoo! How are you, fella?
Hey, you guys. Yeah, I'm doing good. It's so great to be here with you on Boxing Day.
And I wanted to save this bit for you because this guy does this.
Oh, yeah. That is fantastic. His eyes are flashing.
Yes, they are.
It's a cat with flashing eyes.
I think this hat was made in Satan's Porkshow.
Satan's Porkshow. Is that an anagram?
It's an anagram for Santa's workshop, as you explained on the Reduced Shakespeare Radio Show on the BBC World Service.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Satan's Porkshow.
Yes.
Fantastic.
So we're here to talk. We're here to talk about how the illustrious Adam Long has been drawing on Shakespeare his entire career. He maybe will draw on some other things as well, but it's not only the complete works, and for 20 years, a full-on hardcore member of the owner-operator of the Reduced Shakespeare Company, but now you have another new side hustle called ShakesPEAR.
Yeah, we started to animate during lockdown. A friend of mine who he does like homemade animations, and he just said, "Oh, why don't we do something?" And I was like, "Yeah, well, I've always thought teddy bears doing Shakespeare would be funny because Shakespeare's so bloody." Like, we thought we'd start. In fact, he's working on Titus Andronicus right now, so it's sort of eyes being pulled out of heads and hands being chopped off and heads being baked into pies, and it just gets gorier and gorier. But when you say that you're going to do something with teddy bears, you think it's going to be child friendly, and it's not really child friendly, is it?
It's not really. That makes me wonder whether Mr. Bill was a formative influence on you.
Mr. Bill. Oh, I remember Mr. Bill. Yeah, he was that little clay guy that always got smashed by things.
And horribly decapitated.
You know what else was like an influence? Do you remember that short film called Bambi versus Godzilla?
Yes.
That was a great one. Do you suppose that's up on YouTube? Like, could people still, to this very day, young minds being shaped by Bambi versus Godzilla?
It also had that fabulous music. Da, 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 da.
Yeah. The classic sort of pastoral theme.
Indeed.
It's a very short film, isn't it? I think it's only about 15 seconds. It's little Bambi sitting in a field, just chewing on some grass or something and sort of looking demure. And then Godzilla just comes out of nowhere, and that's pretty much it. No more Bambi.
But that your idea of slaughtering teddy bears makes me think of that great line from The Complete Works that says this great truth, was that Shakespeare's tragedies are a lot more funny than his comedies.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something about the contrast there that's really great.
Yeah. I definitely think so. People trying to be funny is not that funny, but people trying to be serious is really hysterically funny. But have you noticed that like everybody's like intensely serious about everything now? I don't know if you've noticed this, but like a lot of people are upset about almost everything.
Yes, I
Yeah.
blame Twitter.
It's
Yeah.
well, I blame the the current and soon to be outgoing American presidents and Brexit. It feels like it's not just the 250,000 people who've died from COVID just in the U.S., but everything that's happening, I think, makes everybody go, too soon, dude. Please.
Yeah.
I know. I feel it too.
Yeah, it can be pretty crazy sometimes. So that's, the thing is, like, lockdown for me is, by the way, in case anybody who's listening to this doesn't know, I'm actually living in London, where we did like have lockdowns a lot. And it's like no difference for me because I just don't go out anyway. Like even before the coronavirus struck, I just stay inside. I try not to interact with people as much as possible. When I do interact, I try to be pleasant. And yeah, so lockdown hasn't made a huge difference. It's just sort of, we stay home and watch TV.
Yeah, so I work from home mainly anyway. So for me, it was much the same. Big difference was I had the kids at home, you know.
Yeah.
In the first big one, you know, doing the teaching.
Well, and lockdown is even better excuse than having children for getting out of things you don't want to do. Oh, I'd love to come to your dumbass party, but I wish.
I wish, but I've got to just sit at home and do nothing.
Yeah.
I've got some very important nothing to be getting on with. It's yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I've seen some good television though. We got addicted to RuPaul's Drag Race. So we watched like 6 seasons of RuPaul's Drag Race. And lately, Tilly and I have been watching this, I think it was made by an animation that was originally done by Nickelodeon, but now it's on Netflix, and it's called Avatar. Did either of you guys ever see
Avatar: The Last Airbender?
The Last of the Airbenders.
My son watches that. The guy with the little arrow on his head. And
yeah. It is pretty freaking cool.
My son loves that.
Oh, it's really good. It's really good. And it's not a million miles off of Star Wars, you know, it's sort of like, you know, the Force is trying to bring balance to the Force basically. But with the Last of the Airbenders, they actually have a really good, profound resolution to it rather than just sort of treading water for 9 feature films and then realizing you don't know what you're doing.
You know, let's go back to the start of your your time drawing on Shakespeare when you joined Jess Winfield and Daniel Singer at the Renaissance Fairs back in 1981. Did you go, oh, finally a way to do Shakespeare, or did you go, oh, I can be funny on stage using the words of this guy?
Yeah. Well, I loved Shakespeare. Like even I think the first Shakespeare I saw was Midsummer Night's Dream, and it was when I was about 12. And it was also like one of my first times in a theater, I think. And the guy who was playing Puck ran off stage and started doing a costume change, and the curtain got stuck. So you could see him like changing his clothes. Like he was just standing there in his pants. And I thought it was the funniest thing I'd ever seen, was like this guy just in his pants. So I guess that, you know, being inspired by Shakespeare and at the same time being inspired by a show that just kind of goes wrong while it's unfolding. So all the seeds of the Reduced Shakespeare Company were there. And then it was a complete disaster why I got into the Reduced Shakespeare Company anyway, because it was just that Barbara Reinertsen, I wasn't even in the company, but the Barbara Reinertsen who was playing Ophelia broke her ankle. And so I was friends with Jess and Daniel, and they just slapped a wig on me and put a skirt on me and shoved me out on stage. And here I am 35 years later talking to you on Boxing Day. So who'd have thought?
And comic greatness was born.
I guess something was born. I don't know what that was.
So it's been 30. Yeah. So it's been far too long in the past now, and I've heard so many different versions of how the complete works came to be. like, did you forget to write Othello? Was it not in there at the beginning? How did it finally come to be the show that has been performed by every college and high school theater program?
Gosh,
extant?
I don't know. Like when you talk about Othello, like not being in it at the beginning, it must not have been in it, but I have no memory of like what we did. We must have done something for Othello, but I can't remember what we did.
Right.
I think I just came out with the boats tied around my thing because I mistake the word moor for meaning a place where you tie up boats. I think I used to just come out with the boats, and then everybody realizes that I didn't research it properly, and they say, sorry about this, but we're going to have to cut that show. And we just moved on. And then finally, after we'd been performing it for a couple of years, I think we said, we probably really should do something about that play because it is kind of an important play. So yeah, so that was when we came up with like the rap version of Othello, which now we would call a hip hop version of Othello.
Well, indeed, yeah.
But last time we did it as because way back before the pandemic. Do you remember 2019? That was, I know that was a long time ago.
I'm too old to remember that far back.
So in 2019, I actually performed the complete works again for the first time in years because we did it as a benefit for an Alzheimer's charity. And so for that performance, we did it as sort of a tribute to Lin-Manuel Miranda. And we thought we used our hip hop version of Othello as a demonstration of multiculturalism in the world of theater.
Despite being three old guys with white beards.
Three old guys, yeah. And we made a big thing out of the fact that we could barely walk, we could barely stand up straight. It's like, what are we doing here?
If you can't remember the lines at an Alzheimer's benefit, when can you forget?
Yeah, exactly. It was a perfect show for forgetting everything and just going, why are we here? What are we raising money for? I don't know.
How did it hold up? How fun was that for you to revisit it after so many years? Yeah,
it was real. Well, it went really, really well. I mean, we because I did it, we decided to we made a conscious choice to do the old fogies version. So it was all old fogies. It was me, and it was Matthew Hendrickson, and it was Brian Torfay, all of whom had been at the Criterion, and now we were really way too old to be doing it, but gosh darn it, we were doing it anyway. And so we just, the rehearsal process was really just a case of like putting on costumes and then trying to remember what we were supposed to do. And if we couldn't remember what we were supposed to do, we just made stuff up. So I'm not sure if the show was like exactly what it was supposed to be, but people laughed at it, and I'm pretty sure we covered pretty much all the plays that would have written.
The event was the three of you doing it now, not recreating something from a decades ago.
And we were being honest to the reality of the situation, as all good art should be. We weren't trying to be anything other than what we were. We were old men on stage with creaky joints.
Kind of like the orchard scenes in Henry the Fourth Part 2 with Justin Shallow remembering his youth.
Yes, exactly.
We've heard the chimes at midnight. It's
yeah. Well, Shakespeare was a big writer about old age, wasn't he? He was very straightforward about what old age was, and wasn't afraid of showing it in his plays. And the 7 Ages of Man does a pretty freaking bleak description of what's in store for all of us if we live long enough.
Sans teeth,
yeah.
God. Yeah.
Second child. I think I'm in second childishness yet. I'm not quite at mere oblivion, but I think I'm watching cartoons.
There's a lot to be said for it. There's definitely a lot to be said for that stage.
Yeah.
I wonder if second childishness ever really went away. First childishness ever went away.
I think there's a lot to be said for just jumping straight to second childishness. Childishness. Yeah, just jump straight to it. So graduate from university. You might as well go ahead and do university and have whatever fun you have there. And then they sort of throw you out into the world where you're supposed to get a job. And then just go straight into second childishness. Like maybe get a job first and then just start acting like a kid almost immediately.
Sounds pretty reasonable to me. And a lot of people, actually, I was listening to a thing the other day, it might have even been on one of these, I lose track, where they're talking about, being an actor is about retaining that sense of childishness, of childhood, of staying in touch with playing. What makes you work as a child works for actors.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I'll tell you what. I was doing some voice directing for Cartoon Network, and that guy who was in I, Claudius came in. Yes, he had this big booming voice. He was supposed to play a mountain, and he was such a force of nature. He just had so much energy. He was telling us all about how NASA had done tests on him to figure out how he could still have the
Brian
Blessed.
Brian
Blessed, that's it. Brian Blessed, that's who it was. Yeah. Brian Blessed. You knew as soon as I talked about NASA, and
as soon as you started saying the booming, I thought, yes,
Brian Blessed, and he was the voice of a mountain. And and I just thought, now that's an inspiration, because I think he's about 200 years old now, isn't he? Something like that.
He's
and he's got more energy than like every 18-year-old in the world put together. So I thought, well, that's what I'll aim for, is to be that kind of an old man, just with a massive booming voice, massive.
Did he swear continuously while he was in there? Because he's
fucking NASA. They're gonna put me in a fucking rocket ship and I'm orbiting the Earth. How does he do it? How on earth does any human being have lungs as big as mine?
He's amazing. He climbed Everest at some ridiculous age and everything.
Yeah.
He's like, he's nuts.
It's because of that astounding lung power.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things.
He doesn't really feel like an old Lear.
No. Well, but Lear is mad, isn't he? He's got that sort of energy when he's out there and he's fighting the storm and blow winds and crack your cheeks, and he could be a Brian Blessed, absolutely. But you know what? When we did that benefit show of the Complete Works, I definitely discovered that I don't have the lung power, and I got through the show. I got to the end of the show, the bit at the end where we basically just all fall down dead. Yeah. And it's just before we're going to do the encores. And I'm laying on the stage and the wig has fallen over my face. So I'm breathing into my own wig and I start to hyperventilate and I start to pass out. And I just thought, oh no, I've just made it through pretty much the whole show. I'm only about 90 seconds from the end of the show at this point, and I'm not going to stay conscious long enough to see this through to the very end.
But what a way to go.
What a way to go. Actually just pass out on stage.
That's for me, that's the worst part of performing that show, which I haven't done now. And I don't know. I can't remember how long it's been, but I can get through all the fast ending of Hamlet and then die. It's the bouncing back up.
Yeah, I know.
The encores. That's I
know. It was a real workout. And also the other thing is now, I'm realizing that for all of those years that I was performing all the time, I was keeping my weight down because I was exercising every night for 2 hours.
Without thinking about it.
Yeah, without thinking about it. So now I'm gaining weight. I'm not healthy. I'm starting to think, God, I really should probably exercise. It would probably be a good idea. But I make it a point to actually move every day for 20 minutes. That's about the extent of my exercise.
Yeah,
I could absolutely play Father Christmas or Falstaff now because I have put on the COVID-19.
Oh, have you got it? Is it around the waist now?
Oh, yeah, baby.
I got, let me see if I can, so are people actually going to see this? I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm not, there's that there. And then the plaid shirt makes it even more visible. The sort of horizontal stripes sort of add to the effect.
You know what? That's a thing we should talk about. I wrote about this for the Folger Shakespeare Library a year ago. What is or should be or could be the best Shakespeare Christmas play, do we think?
Ooh.
Wow, that is a really good question.
I saw a production of Twelfth Night once set, well, the Branagh one with Renaissance that he did with Richard Briers as Malvolio, Anton Lesser as Feste, which they filmed, is sort of set at Christmas, and that version, it was all wintry and stuff. And there was also the Much Ado that they did recently with the RSC, which they set at Christmas as well, which was
That was directed by Chris Luscombe. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I watched the video of that. That was terrific.
You'd think like Winter's Tale would be an obvious choice since it's winter, but it's not a great play. So I'd hate to lumber Christmas with a Winter's Tale.
And a massive chunk happening at a summer fair at the second half as well.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear you. Other people agree with me that it's not a great play.
It's not a great
many
play.
people's favorite, but
She hasn't actually been dead. She's just been pretending to be a statue for 25 years. Oh, it's the oldest trick in the book, and we fell for it. You know what? I actually think Tempest could possibly be a Christmas play because it's kind of like, rebirth. Well, actually, no, I suppose Easter's more about rebirth, isn't it?
Well, they did do a version with Patrick Stewart at the RSC, which was set on a wintry island. They actually did like an icy island version of it there, and that was quite interesting. It did bring a different quality to it, for sure.
Yeah. Oh,
I think
that was cool looking.
Yeah. I think my conclusion was Merry Wives of Windsor, which is just light, domestic, comic. There's a scene in the forest with people in costumes and animals, talking animals. That seemed Christmassy. But it's also got one of my favorite quotes from Shakespeare, particularly around this time of year. Heaven give you many, many merry days. Let us everyone go home and laugh this sport o'er by a country fire.
Oh, beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
Right. That's right at the end. Yeah, that's lovely.
But I know that several people have tried and continue to try to write a Shakespeare Christmas carol.
Yeah.
And I've read two different versions of it, one more successful than the other. I know that Ian Desher, who wrote the Shakespeare Star Wars, Shakespeare Back to the Future, I think he's written literally a Christmas carol, but in iambic pentameter.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant maybe it was like Scrooge gets visited by Shakespearean characters instead of the ghost of Christmas Past.
Ben Elton did it. There was an Upstart Crow Christmas special where they did a kind of Christmas carol-y thing in that as well.
In the version I saw, I think it was Shakespeare being first visited by the ghost of Christopher Marlowe.
Oh, okay.
Not Marlee, Marlowe.
Yeah.
There was a production of As You Like It that was done at the Open Air Theatre in London here, where I seem to remember, or maybe I'm just imagining it, but I seem to remember that they used Christmas lights for the brother who ends up in the forests living with his foresty rogues. It had a very Christmassy sort of feel to it. So you could do As You Like It as a Christmas play.
Yeah.
That's got kind of a...
Yeah.
Or we could do the version of Cardenio that we found that was really the story of Robin Hood, wasn't that?
Yeah, that's right. It's actually the story of Robin Hood. Oh man.
You also wrote. You've done. We did a little bit in our Christmas album, the Reduced Shakespeare Company Christmas, where we did a Little Dickens.
Yeah.
Basically, a Christmas carol abridged. But then you wrote a whole show.
I did, yeah. So after the Shakespeare show closed at the Criterion, I thought I was just going to retire from theater altogether. And then weirdly, I got asked to do a reduced Star Wars. So I did that. And then that whet my appetite to do more theater. So I went to Mark Goucher, who had produced the Shakespeare show and the Criterion, and I said, I'd love to do something new. He said, Adam, if you can write a show about Dickens, I can sell it. So I wrote a show about Dickens, and he couldn't sell it. So,
well, he sold a ticket to me because I saw it.
yeah. I got it. It went okay, but I don't know. I don't know it, but it went well. We got some good reviews. It was fun to do. I learned a lot about Dickens, which was great because I had tried to read David Copperfield when I was a teenager, and it hadn't made sense to me. But going back to read Dickens again, having lived in London for a few years, suddenly this is like the best stuff I've ever read. Oh my God, it's incredible.
I do find that Dickens, it certainly makes sense when you get older as well. I read some when I was younger and it was a slog. When I read it now, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
I think it takes having a few miles on the clock to actually understand it really well, I think, or to appreciate what he was writing, Which when you consider how young he was writing some of it, that's quite extraordinary, really.
And I love the fact that he wrote episodically. So he sort of would publish a chapter and then you'd have to wait a month to get another chapter. And when you think about how fast we consume content these days, people go through a whole box set of a series in 3 nights or 1 night. Whereas Dickens, he'd write 1 chapter, people would read it, and then they'd have a whole month to think about it before they'd see the next chapter.
That would be like watching a weekly episode, and if you want to do the box set, you wait for the novel.
Yeah.
You'd have to wait for it.
You can now binge all of David Copperfield in this technology called books.
Yeah. But my favorite from that was he did in the middle of writing Oliver Twist. There's a chapter where Oliver actually gets shot, which isn't in the musical. So Oliver goes on a heist with Bill Sikes, and the heist goes wrong. And as they're running away, Oliver gets shot, and he falls down in a ditch, and that's the end of the chapter. So you just think, oh my God. So the poor audience, they have to wait for a month to find out, is he alive or dead? And they don't know that the name of the book is Oliver Twist. So they don't know that he's going to still be alive. So, right. So they just got this chapter and this kid got shot. So they have to wait a month. So at the end of the month, they come back and Dickens has decided to just sort of like pan over to somewhere else. So we're not really with Oliver Twist anymore. Dickens is now over at Fagin's lair, and Fagin is hanging out with the Artful Dodger and all the other little urchins and thieves, and they're having a good little chat about something, and somebody comes running in and they say, hey, we just heard that something went wrong with Bill Sikes and Oliver. And Fagin goes, oh no, I wonder what could have gone wrong with Bill Sikes and Oliver. And then that's the end of that chapter. So we got to wait another month. And then we go back to Fagin's lair, and then it's Bill Sikes comes showing up, says, oh my God, it all went horribly wrong, and Oliver got shot. And they're like, is he okay? He's like, I don't know, I just ran. So then we got to wait another month now. So at this point, we've seen a little kid get shot, and we've had to wait 3 months to find out if he's alive or dead. So that, it just shows that people consumed their entertainment in a much different way back then than we do now. By the way, it's a spoiler, but he didn't die. Sorry if that ruins Christmas
now. Hey, Adam, when you went back to start doing the Shakespeare shows, did you have to do a lot of research and thinking and adapting, or is Shakespeare still in your bones enough where you were able to go, oh yeah, I could do this pretty quick?
Well, it is really in my bones, and we started with King Lear, which was something that I got hired by Sky Television to do a condensed version of King Lear about 12 years ago now. And so I had to really read up on King Lear, and I loved King Lear. It became my favorite play. I became obsessed with it. And Sky Television, so we wrote this condensation of it, and we got all these, Benedict Cumberbatch was going to be in it, but at the time he wasn't a big name, and Sky really wanted a big name. And they said, if you could get Patrick Stewart, then you've got a show. But we need a slam dunk. So we got Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart said yes to it. And at that point, the executive at Sky said, we can't afford Patrick Stewart. And so like half of Sky couldn't imagine doing it with Patrick Stewart because they couldn't afford him. The other half of Sky couldn't imagine doing it without him. And in the end, they just paid me my fee and shelved the whole project. And then Benedict Cumberbatch goes on and becomes the biggest name on the planet. So in the back of my head, I always had this longing to do King Lear. So when the teddy bears came along, and the first thing I said was, let's just do King Lear. It's great. It's got eyes being ripped out of the heads, and it's got storms, and everybody dies. Like, everybody dies. I was thinking about that, like, people don't really do tragedies in the same way nowadays as Shakespeare. Like, when Shakespeare did a tragedy, it was a real tragedy. Like, everybody you care about is dead at the end.
I do feel like he was writing cautionary tales, Be careful. Don't.
I kind of agree with you, but nobody lives to learn the lesson, really. So a lot of the time.
Well, the audience does.
The audience goes home and goes, geez, I'm never going to know another one of his plays again. Everybody was dead at the end.
Because like Lear was written around the time that Elizabeth was dying and James was about to take over. So the threat of a divided kingdom between England and Scotland, and England and Ireland, all the British Isles, that's an ongoing tension. And so Lear feels a little bit like, don't divide your kingdom in three.
Yeah, don't do that. I never knew that before, but I guess if that was the time in life where Shakespeare wrote that, Shakespeare was getting on age-wise as well by then. So he was thinking about, well, what does it mean to be old and have you were once masterful and now you aren't anymore, but in your head you still think you should be, and what problems does that cause for people?
I've been in a book group that started before the pandemic, but it's a Shakespeare book club, so we've been reading his plays in order, one a month, and it's been fascinating to watch the growth of his work, because he writes from the point of view of the age he is.
Yeah.
And so like Richard Burbage, his star actor, he first plays Romeo, but then as he gets older, he writes older characters for Burbage to play.
Oh, fantastic. And so Tempest was Shakespeare's last play, wasn't it? His final play was Tempest. So what was his first one?
Either Two Gents or Taming of the Shrew or
Comedy of Errors, isn't it?
Comedy of Errors, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually,
Comedy of Errors is kind of like Servant of Two Masters, isn't it?
Yeah. It's very much I've directed it 4 times, and the amazing thing about it, I love, is it is the ultimate farce. It's got everything in it that every farce ever since has got. In and out of doors, people dressing up, women, people found in compromising positions, the mistaken identity. It's all there in this unbelievable farce of a show. It's fantastic. There's nothing new.
It's like 16 sets of identical twins, isn't it?
Now it now occurs to me that you can draw a line from Comedy of Errors with Servant of Two Masters to Faulty Towers, which was a master with several shitty servants.
Yes.
Maybe that was Shakespeare's original title for it. A master with several shitty servants. Nah, that'll never play. Especially if we want a family audience. Comedy of Errors, that's better. It says
Also,
comedy, says errors.
Differently. Several fitty fervent.
So where does Midsummer Night's Dream come in the canon? Is that sort of more in the middle of Shakespeare's canon?
Sort of first third, I think.
Yeah.
Sort of early middle sort of thing.
Yeah.
Early middle,
That's still one of my favorites. That's the next one we're doing with the teddy bears. We got coming up with the teddy bears. We're only slotting this in sort of around other work that we're doing. So I don't know how long it'll be before the new teddy bears come out, but we've got a version of teddy bears performing Midsummer Night's Dream done in the style of Take a Walk on the Wild Side by Lou Reed.
Cool.
And then we've got this like just incredibly bloody 90-second version of Titus Andronicus coming out as well. I don't know which one Josh is going to do first, but those will be the next 2 things that'll disturb people's sleep.
Well, I love it that you guys are both, you can continue to work during this lockdown. I've been mostly do stage stuff, so I don't know when we're going to.
I know. When are you guys going? What are you guys going to do? Are you going to any news about what's happening? Well, no, we can't. Okay, we'll have to cut all this because We don't know what the situation will be when Boxing Day comes around, do we?
Yeah.
So
That's true.
so
I mean,
they may have already announced all theaters will be back in action on February 3rd. Congratulations, theater people.
no, I was just gonna say, I'm getting a lot of writing done. It's just nobody's paying me for it. It's all on spec, Hopefully somebody will want to do it later. I love those festive. Are those festive holiday bears, Gary?
Well, they're they are they are King Lear, Titus Andronicus, and Midsummer Night's Dream.
As bears?
Yeah, I'll click on it. I'll send you all these, so you'll be able to see them properly.
That is so cool. How do you do that? Like, is there just a part of your brain that, like, as you're listening to people talk, you're just seeing images in your head, and then your hand has been trained to just take those images in your head and put them down on paper?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think in pictures, and so when people say stuff or I read stuff, I instantly am playing like a movie of it, or what I'm hearing in my head. I just see it as pictures, and then I can freeze frame it and draw that moment or whatever. That's kind of how my brain works, I guess.
That is amazing. I'm in awe of you, Gary. And
they're just fun little scribbles, really. But it's what it's a good job that people like it, because it's the only thing I can really do. So it's kind of useful that people actually pay me to do it, sort of thing.
Well, it's what I'll tell you what, when I met you, it was when I was first starting to work in children's television, and working on Fireman Sam. I really learned a lot from working with you and Laura and Paul. And I was wandering around in Sainsbury's, and I saw a can of beans. I think it was either beans or spaghetti hoops that had Fireman Sam on them. And I realized at that point that it's a massive industry, isn't it? It's sort of like, it's like when you say, oh, I'm lucky that I get paid for doing this. It's like, actually, you're like the bedrock of this massive.
Yeah, if only there was some kind of financial remuneration for that.
Yeah, I know.
If I had a slice of that pie, or that can of beans, it'd be great. But
I know well, it all started with Walt Disney, and it followed on in the way that he started it. And basically, he didn't think he had to pay anybody who actually did anything.
Yeah.
Because the important thing was the people who sold it and how much they could sell it for.
Yeah, "'Twas ever thus." But it's fun to do, and that's the main thing. I'd rather be doing that than pretty much anything else. So it's, I mean, how lucky to be doing a job that one loves to do,
Yeah, and it's so great to be sitting here looking at you wearing a Hamlet shirt and a Santa Claus hat, and knowing that, like, as I'm talking about teddy bears performing Shakespeare, they're coming to life on a sheet of paper. I mean, how freaking surreal is that?
It's a very strange life.
Well, and now, Adam, you've got, Shakespeare, the Shakespeare videos, which I think is going to lead to many fabulous marketing opportunities, certainly more than drawing on Shakespeare so far.
Oh, yeah, I'm planning on retiring off of them bears.